talk about a Swiss cheese effect. Door blew open, fell off, got sucked into the left engine, and throughout all these years of flying and flight training and all this experience, and even actually being a flight instructor myself for quite a bit of time, you are always preparing for the worst and expecting the best, right? It's kind of that classic saying, and you go through all these training exercises, and really, especially once you enter like a 135 world or maybe a 121 world, you really start to go for flying simulators and really experiencing as close to a genuine worst case scenario that you can possibly encounter. And that's been something I've been doing for the last few years now, is really going to the simulators, and every 6 months just kind of getting beat up, right, and going through all the worst case scenarios. And so not too long ago now, I actually experienced my very first real world issue, at least in a larger airplane, and something that was way more of a serious issue than I've personally ever encountered before. And so I figured I would share this with you guys and let you know what it was all about. And this actually happened to me in a Gulfstream G150. But kind of a little preface on the story and what ended up happening, and the sequence of events. We're going to be departing out of the Phoenix area, and we're going out towards Nashville. And that was the original destination for this trip. And with that being said, we get the airplane all prepped, obviously do a pre-flight, really thorough pre-flight, both myself and my co-pilot. We get the airplane prepared, and everything looks good. You know, we're feeling ready to rock. And we get passengers loaded up, and we've got all of our stuff loaded, and we close up the cabin door, and one thing led to another. For some reason, one of our passengers' vehicles, he ended up leaving the keys on the roof of the car, but the line guys didn't catch that. They didn't notice it. They're having a hard time. We're trying to tell them from inside the airplane, you know, where the keys to the car were, and apparently they just didn't understand either the passenger and ourselves trying to communicate to them where the keys were. So we ended up having to shut down and open up the main entry door and basically go tell them where the keys to the car were. Well, during that whole process, we don't know, the G150 has a active pressure sealed door. So there's actually pressure being ducted into the door to create a tighter seal. And there must have been some residual pressure in there that we didn't really know about, because when we tried to close the door, it was actually pretty difficult. It was a little more difficult, a little bit more force required to close the door, but nothing excessive, nothing like, oh geez, I feel like I'm gonna break the door, right? There was nothing like that. It just was a little bit more force, but you know, notable, but nothing substantial. And we get everything latched back up, no CAS messages, everything's looking great, and obviously we go through the rest of our checks, and everything is just going smoothly, right? And this is luckily one of those days where we didn't have kind of that Swiss cheese effect of just a bunch of negative compounding issues that happen, and that results in obviously an accident down the road. But for us, we didn't really have that. Obviously, it was like kind of frustrating, and you have pressures or passengers on board, and you feel maybe that time pressure to keep moving forward, which I think we really handled pretty well. You know, we didn't really feel too much of that. You know, passengers were super okay with everything. You know, they're frequent flyers, so to speak, right? So they kind of understand what happens, and so we end up departing. We're climbing out. Everything's good on the climb out. Once again, run through all the checklists. Everything's looking good. All of a sudden, we hit 26,000 feet, and I think we're leveling off at like 33 or 34,000 feet initially. Well, going through about 26,000 feet, next thing you know, we get a red CAS message. You get the triple chime, right? Which is just the three things you don't want, right? You don't want to get the triple chime, and you don't want the red CAS message. And we see a main cabin entry door unsafe, and that's bad. You know, for those of you guys that don't know what that CAS message means, it means that the main entry door is not secure. You know, it is not closed. It's open, or at least the sensor thinks that that's the case. And so, of course, you know, this could result in a loss of cabin pressure. And so, you know, we don our masks, we bust out our checklist, and we start to problem solve, you know, from there. And going through the checklist, you know, it kind of prompts us, okay, are you seeing a loss of cabin pressure? Are you seeing a loss of any of this stuff abnormal, maybe cabin differential, or you know, you're losing altitude in the cabin? And we weren't. So we were prompted basically to take our masks off and you know, start verifying that the door is actually secured, and all these things. And what was really cool about it, what I love about the 135 121 training environment, is how often you run through these different scenarios of these really bad situations, and it's kind of becomes second nature, right? It's not really that stressful of a situation in the moment, at least, right? Obviously, you kind of get on the ground and you're like, oh man, that was a bummer, you know, that was pretty dang stressful. But when you're airborne, you're handling all this stuff. It's kind of just, oh, okay, yeah, I've done this, you know, 100 times, right? And so as we're following the checklist, we decide, hey, you know what, it's gonna be best if we divert. Obviously, we don't know what the actual condition of this is. Let's get this airplane on the ground. And so we make the scenic tour to Nashville via Albuquerque, and land in Albuquerque, get the plane sorted out, and continue on our way to Nashville eventually. But one thing that I just found very cool in experiencing kind of a first emergency, right, is how well the procedures and how well the training environment really works out to keep you safe, and it really implement good safety habits and practices, and really where all that stuff comes in. And you know, obviously we're very fortunate this scenario was not the extreme nature that it could have been. I know that there's been actually several different airplanes where this has been really bad, and one that came to my mind immediately during the situation when we're starting to divert and all that, I was thinking about that Citation XL that had the door blow open out of, I believe it was San Diego or John Wayne or something like that. And that whole scenario spiraled out of control. Talk about a Swiss cheese effect. Door blew open, fell off, got sucked into the left engine, and obviously shut that engine down. And I mean, just a whole slew of events happened. It just was very comforting to know that as a crew together, that we were able to troubleshoot some of these things and work through some of these scenarios, and really move on, make a successful outcome, and tackle the problem together. Hey gang, here from Hangar Talk. Thank you so much for plugging into the channel, liking, subscribing. We appreciate all you continuous subscribers, and we can't wait to see you on the next one.